Like, who's this flock of seagulls looking fucker?
Like, who's this particularly handsome looking? Oh, the dude that say John Chana.
John Chen.
You say John Chana. Uh,
Oh. Who's this Italian-looking flock of seagulls-looking motherfucker? And I ran so far away, couldn't get away. So let's start with the news of Ring of Honor. We're gonna chop these up into little segments, I think.
yeah.
That way we can see get more play. I think. Let me just kind of put this here. Okay. Let's see what are we at. We're at 8. We'll say 9. We'll say 9 even. That'll work. So, with the big news, I put AEW to Ring of Honor. It's supposed to be Ring of Honor to AEW. It'll make sense later. Ring of Honor is now all elite. And we sat here last Monday. What could it be? And I flat out said the only thing that makes sense for this level of secrecy is a purchase. Because contracts don't have, not non-competes, what the fuck is it called? A gag order, unless there's an acquisition in place. Because they're trying to make sure that there isn't any type of fuckery with purchases. Like, for instance, if Marcus and I are both trying to buy the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile, and Marcus goes into discussions to purchase it, they'll have essentially a gag order in some cases, because what they don't want is once a deal is in place and you have to work out the particulars, somebody to come in and fuck with the negotiations. That's not always the case, but in when you're dealing with a product the size of Ring of Honor, that's exactly the case at hand. Like, you don't want people to undermine or try to screw you out of a deal, especially when a handshake deal is made. And now basically what happens is you sit down and say, we'll sell to you for $35 million. Okay. But then it comes with the, well, what are we looking at for the length of purchase for how long we have to pay it back? Do you guys have any intentions on using X amount of hours of property for the next foreseeable future? Because if they intend on still airing the show, as Sinclair has pretty much said, they still intend on producing the television series, and their next set of tapings in April, I think, are going to create more television product. How long is that going to be good for? How long can they air commercials on their network for that? What contracted talent, or behind the scenes talent, or Sinclair adjacent talent, how long are their contracts, and when can they? There's so many minor bits that need to be worked out beyond just I want to buy the product. And that's usually when the non-compete comes in, or not the non-compete, the gag order comes in, so you can work all that out without the pretense of possibly being outbid while you're negotiating the deal. So as soon as they said that, I can't talk about this illegally yet, I was like, it's a purchase. And Marcus, I said last week, it's a purchase. And I said I wouldn't be surprised if they bought Ring of Honor, because that just makes a lot of sense. Were you shocked that I was as spot on as I was in my prediction?
As long as we've known each other now through the interwebs, it's rarely am I shocked of you being wrong. This kind of stuff. I think it was more so me.
Rarely are you shocked about me being right?
That depends on the day, but really. But when it comes to stuff like this, like there's you done seen this stuff many times, and you're connected. So yeah, and plus you're right. I mean, the level of secrecy, specifically when somebody like Khan, who kind of has the disposition oftentimes of certain stuff like an actual child.
Isn't he like 42?
Yeah, and I didn't even watch him announce it. Apparently, that was a interesting way he announced it. But yeah, I mean, I think I was just kind of holding out hope that for a little bit they could kind of make a comeback. But and we even talked about this on the show. They kind of had bungled stuff so bad behind the scenes. This was all. I mean, the minute it happened, this was almost inevitable. So, it's kind of, it is what it is. It's I guess some mild irony that a lot of that thank you ROH video came from a lot of guys that now, ironically, somebody like CM Punk and others were in AEW. Like a lot of
Hmm.
that thank you situations in that Goodbye Ring of Honor video were from people in AEW, and now they're literally owned by AEW. So, you know,
Going
been
forward, I think is the interesting thing because it's not just going to be a streaming property that they bought to launch an eventual, AEW streaming promotion or what have you.
yeah,
I think this is an actual attempt to get Ring of Honor either on TBS or replace one of the YouTube shows with it and have it tour, but also have it serve as a developmental brand. And I think that's like the perfect thing for Ring of Honor because that's how it's been treated essentially for 15 odd years. A lot of people always kind of suggest like, oh well, Cody and AEW killed Ring of Honor. No, not really. Ring of Honor invested a lot of money into guys for a very short period of time to try to get them into a different place. And it didn't work because even at the height of Ring of Honor's run in 2013, 2014, 2015, they weren't doing well. They were not a very watched product. I know a lot of people like to thumb their nose at Impact, but a lot of Impact is viewed nowadays via the internet. So, like looking at 110,000, 160,000 people watching it on Access TV really isn't a fair criteria for what they're doing. When you look at Ring of Honor, they've always ever been on syndicated television, which is in 2022 unheard of. Any successful show, product, entity on any type of syndication really isn't successful. So I don't really see how they could have been. The only thing that was saving them was the fact that Sinclair was loaded. They had billions of dollars. But the problem came when they tried to create a Bally Sports digital media streaming service and sunk something like $750 million into it at a loss. And then they had to bring up, I think it was like $1.5 billion in, what the fuck is it called? In extra revenue. They had a campaign for it and got it from various different outlets, from like, the hell is it called? I know the term, it's escaping me at the moment. Like lending banks. I forget what they're called. But they had to raise, like, I think $1.5 billion in capital just to get the streaming service back on track. So they lost a huge chunk of their money on this streaming service. And the streaming service's failure is exactly why Sinclair did what they did with Ring of Honor. It wasn't because Ring of Honor itself was getting beaten by AEW. It wasn't because Ring of Honor itself wasn't making enough money to turn a profit. It wasn't because Ring of Honor itself wasn't a problem. It was because of the streaming service that their parent company launched and failed, or didn't even get around to launching. So, investment capitalism, investment capitalist banks, that's what I was thinking of. That's who they had to raise money. So, the failure of the Bally streaming service, and it still hasn't even launched yet, and there are no plans to launch it in the immediacy, is why Sinclair gave up on Ring of Honor, because they had to cut costs somewhere. So knowing that Ring of Honor, excuse me, in its own essence wasn't a failure is a big boon for Tony Khan because Ring of Honor has been successful, moderately, but still successful. What happens next is going to be very interesting because I could see it on YouTube, like I said before. I could see it on TBS. I could see it going to another Turner channel, but I don't know what other Turner channels there are. I guess I can look that up right now. Marcus, would you like to see it on TBS? Do you think that's a possibility, like a Saturday night show, or maybe replace Rampage with it?
I don't know. I don't know yet. Actually, I don't hate Rampage at all. I think it's like I said, that we talked about it like that just 1 hour, get back to watching wrestling for an hour, like NXT of old is kind of refreshing. You get in, you get do what you got to do, and you get out of there. Because even something as good as Impact and like MLW, hours of it can be daunting, um,
Mm-hmm.
on a weekly basis. But I don't know. Like I think they probably still figuring it out. Like I think more than anything, I think like you said, like a feeder system or something like that for it. Not like they necessarily need a place to garner more talent to the roster now, but And it could be a place to kind of develop some of the talent that they might not be using on TV. So I think that's probably the most concrete idea right now. I don't know about getting on TV. I know obviously locking in that library is a significant thing considering who's on their roster. But I don't know yet. I think I'm still in the whole fog of it kind of being dissipated. I think for me, I'm figuring trying to figure out like what's going to become of these championships that's still out here being defended elsewhere.
And the champions.
Exactly.
So there are a few outlets that if they don't go with TBS, because I don't see them going to TNT if they have Ring of Honor. If they're sticking with the Turner Broadcasting conglomerate, True TV is an outlet. They could go to True TV, and it would kind of make sense. I think True TV even had pro wrestling at one point, or were in talks to land Impact.
I'm about to say, did Impact get on there? Like,
No, they're on Discovery, Pop, and what was it? Pursuit.
Destination America.
Oh yeah, that's what it was. Not Discovery. It was Destination America. Oof. So I could see Ring of Honor going to True or staying on TBS. I could also see them canceling Dark Elevation and doing a Ring of Honor TV show. I don't see them adding a fifth show. I think that would be a lot, even if it's under the Ring of Honor banner. So I could see them just kind of sticking with, the four and finding Ring of Honor a place within those four. That being said, the idea of running it as a developmental brand is a good idea. Obviously, John Gresham's not sticking around because he's not a developmental guy. But like I think of guys like Hook or Brian Pillman Jr., the Acclaimed, the other tag team that just came back on Dynamite the other night, the Brothers. I forget what their names. One of them was out for a while. They could fit well on there. Arn Anderson's kid could fit well in a new Ring of Honor. There's certainly a lot of depth to this roster that could benefit from being on the road, 300 days a year wrestling as a developmental brand. I think that's a good way to go. I think it's the right way to go, and I think it makes sense. And while we're talking about it, I hope one day Impact just buys OVW.
Yeah, because yeah, you're right. That is still a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because I've not seen that narrative of all the times because all the times Impact was supposed to be bought or shut down. It's Ring of Honor that gets taken up, and meanwhile Impact celebrating 20 years.
Well, that's the thing that I kind of wanted to mention real fast. During Tony Khan's whole spiel, he mentioned that Ring of Honor's first show was called The Era of Honor Begins. And Marcus, that was 20 years to the day on February 23rd, 2 weeks ago. Maybe not even two weeks ago. Let's see. That was 2 Wednesdays ago. So he made the announcement on the 2nd, and the week prior, the week prior to Tony Khan announcing he bought Ring of Honor, was their 20th anniversary. Jesus, come July, Impact better be wary of potential buyers. Because that is not a good thing. Oh no, 20 years, death count.
This is where the joke of them essentially owning themselves comes in handy.
Pretty much. So, I'm curious to see what's going to happen. If you had to pick a Ring of Honor World Champion from the casting crew of known Ring of Honor guys, assuming guys like John Gresham aren't sticking around, so like you're looking at more like the not Kyle Riley's, Rhett Titus's and the Josh the Good Woods of the world, or some of the AEW guys that are not on higher echelons, like your Hooks and your Arn Anderson Jr., I forget his name. Who would you put the bond? And it could be anyone from that group. Like, it doesn't need to be those four guys. It could be Wardlow. It could be Brandon Cutler if you want to get weird about it. It could be Buddy Murphy if you want to get boring about it.
I'm gonna get buff about it. Give it the Cage, damn it.
I was thinking one of the names that you could do if you really wanted to was Hobbs. I know he's a main roster guy, but just for the ability to get him more opportunities, I think Powerhouse Hobbs down in Ring of Honor for like a year could be
You're not
real
you're not
smart.
wrong. You're not wrong. Um, and you that might be the best thing because and this is not the whole thing about like they got another not a bigger better black guy or anything like that, but I don't know how much shine he would get now that you know Limitless is there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because they basically had like a buff off in that very entertaining ladder match. It was him, Wardlow, and Keith. Um, and we always talk about with it. AEW, they got a very interesting roster, but they don't necessarily know what to do with all their pieces, which is why Cage's name gets brought up. Speaking of Buff, you're still trying to figure out where he's at. So I think sending guys like that down there, maybe even a Hook, because you need guys down there like you need Pete Dunnish guys down there,
Mm-hmm.
specifically if you're going to retain a lot of that roster. So yeah, I mean that wouldn't be a bad thing. Somebody like Cage going against Powerhouse House, but they already had their feud, haven't they? So
Well, here's
um,
some, I went to the the AEW roster page, and I found some guys that could make sense for Ring of Honor as the world champion. Uh, Obviously, Anthony Bones, longtime big time fan.
yeah,
Anthony Ogogo, he needs a lot of work, and Ring of Honor is a perfect place for him. Brian Pillman Jr. and Brock Anderson both make sense. Let's see. Uh, Never Danhausen. Danhausen deserves the AEW World Title.
not
Always.
be- not before Sunny Kiss.
Oh no. Dante and Darius Martin both make sense. At least as tag team champions. Fuego del Sol. Let's see. Hook, we already mentioned. If Joey Janela still has a job with AEW by the time Ring of Honor relaunches, you could send him down because he's not doing anything. Kip Sabian. I don't even know what's going on with him. He might be hurt. Let's see. This young up and comer, I think his name is Mark Henry.
It's time for the main event.
Lee Moriarty could make sense down there as the world champ. Let's see. Some interesting names, but not a lot of names that make sense. Already mentioned Powerhouse Hobbs. Like Ricky Starks, I feel like is in that interesting void where he could both be a Ring of Honor champion and the TNT champion or AEW, whatever championship he has right now. FTW title. I don't know who Sean Dean is. Captain Sean Dean. Not sure. Serpentico, he'd be decent down there. Swerve just signed. Tony Nese has just no charisma about him.
Wait, what? Tony Nese is there? Okay.
Yeah. He's 9-1, 3-0 in 2022. I do like how they have the career wins and losses. I like that. So there are options. There are certainly options to send talent to AEW's new development territory, Ring of Honor. It's just which ones are they going to do? I think the two most obvious are Brian Pillman Jr. and Brock Anderson. I think those two make the most sense to send down. Everyone else, like, there's always a reason not to, but most guys are in a tag team or are doing something like, or like someone like Aaron Solo. He's there, but he's not doing anything. Like half the Dark Order, but like none of those names are going to help you with developing the Ring of Honor brand, and that's kind of the thing. You need to split the difference between needs polish, would benefit from the opportunity, as well as being a big enough name to draw people to the show. Like Alan Angels of the Dark Order is not going to be pulling people in through the door. It's just not going to happen. So don't do it. So we'll see what ends up happening here in the long run. Hopefully it doesn't take too long for them to get things going, but you